I just bought a new house. My kid is obsessed with the crawl space. Buying a new house is never easy, especially in the modern market. Regardless, I had to move due to my job transferring me to their offices in another city, and so I had to sell my old home and move myself and my son, Ryan, a few states over. We took a weekend to visit the city so I could tour a few homes that looked promising, and that's when I first visited our current house. It was a nice little two-story with a big yard, perfect for a 10-year-old kid who loved to run around and play. It was during the house tour that we first found out about the crawl space. The real estate agent was letting me know some key details about the house, and Ryan was clearly not happy about being dragged along for something like this. As we finished talking, the real estate agent seemed to notice this and leaned down to address Ryan directly. "Hey kiddo, this must be pretty boring for you, huh?" Ryan nodded. "I was gonna save this for last, but do you want to see something cool?" Ryan nodded again. I gave the realtor a worried look, but he just smiled and gestured for us to follow. We followed him upstairs to the guest bedroom, which I was planning on converting into Ryan's if we went ahead with the purchase. It also gave me peace of mind since the guest bedroom and the master were right next to each other. The realtor went to the closet and opened the double doors for us to see inside. Nothing seemed weird until he reached down and pressed hard against a section of the wall. The panel sunk into the wall and rolled aside, revealing a small hollow space built between the two bedrooms. "No way," Ryan said. He bent down and stuck his head inside the hollow space. "What is this?" I asked the realtor. "Well, this home was custom built, see," he said. "And the guy had this kid who wanted a fort or something. You know how kids are." Well, a treehouse was out of the option since nothing good for that grows around here, so the guy had this idea to build a little hidey hole for his kid. I call it the crawl space. "Well, isn't this a bit of a safety hazard?" I said. "What if Ryan got stuck in there?" "Not to worry, ma'am," the realtor said. He knelt down to talk to Ryan. "Hey buddy, can you get in there and try to shut the door for me?" Ryan obliged. He crawled into the hollow and tried to push the panel, but couldn't get it to budge. "The panel can only be opened or closed from the outside," the realtor said. He gestured for Ryan to come out, and once he was out of the crawl space, the realtor pushed a different section of wall and the panel slid back into place. "See," he said. "Plus, the crawl space is right up against the master bedroom, so if this guy gets up to any mischief in there, you'll be able to hear him clear as day." "Mom, can we get this house, please?" Ryan begged, tugging on my arm. "I'm gonna have to think about it, Ryan," I said. "This is a big decision for Mommy." We finished up the house tour and left to visit a few others before heading back to our hometown. For the next few days, Ryan went on and on about how cool the crawl space was and all the ideas he had for what he could do with it. I had my concerns about it and decided to check a few other listings before making a decision. However, as time went on, the crawl space house was looking like a better and better option. It was pretty cheap for its size, was by a lot of great schools, and it would mean I only had a 20-minute commute. When I told Ryan I'd decided to buy the house, he practically jumped for joy. Moving in took a while, but once we were settled, we took a weekend to decorate the crawl space for Ryan's enjoyment. I put up some fairy lights inside, and he moved in a bunch of his books for him to read, along with setting down an old blanket to make things comfortable. Once we were done, it was honestly pretty charming. I could see why Ryan had wanted it so bad. But then again, what kind of kid doesn't want a secret space all to themselves? Things were pretty great for the first week. Ryan was adjusting well to his new school and even told me he made a friend by the name of Evan. I was excited to see him take to his new surroundings. It had been my main concern about moving. Things were going well at my new job too. It was the same company, so all the systems and stuff were the same, and my coworkers were all really nice. The second week was the same as the first, but things began to be strange the second weekend we spent in the house. It was a late Saturday afternoon. I was laying in bed, watching something on Netflix. Ryan was playing in his room. I just got done with an episode of my show and paused it so I could go downstairs and grab a snack. That's when I heard something. "Yeah," Ryan's quiet voice said. "School's been going all right." I paused. It seemed as if Ryan was inside the crawl space, but who was he talking to? He didn't have a phone, and mine was sitting on my nightstand. "I made a friend. His name is Evan," he said. I think you'd like him. I stood by the wall, not saying anything. Ryan hadn't always been as active as he is now. When he was little, he spent a lot of time inside and came up with an imaginary friend. It had been a bit hard to watch as a parent. Sure, lots of kids come up with imaginary friends, but you can't help but feel like it's a failure on your part that your kid has no real friends. I figured that maybe Ryan had brought this friend back to help with the move. I walked over to his bedroom and saw him reading a comic book inside the crawlspace. "Hey kiddo," I said, "I'm about to go make dinner. After that, do you want to do a movie night?" Ryan perked up and smiled. "Do I get to pick?" he said. I nodded. Things were fine for the rest of the weekend, and I didn't notice anything weird with Ryan. He was struggling a bit in math class, but that was about it. Then Ryan asked him if he could invite his friend Evan over to play. I gave the go-ahead, hoping it'd make him feel less lonely. Evan came over the next Saturday, and his mom decided to tag along so that we could get the chance to talk. We sat in the kitchen and drank some coffee while the boys played upstairs. Evan's mom was named Samantha, and we were getting along just fine. "So, what happened to the man of the house?" she asked. "Oh, we split up when Ryan was about 4, I said. He didn't really want custody, and I was more than happy to keep Ryan away from him, so it's just been us for a while. Anyone else come along? A few guys, but I dunno. It's not that Ryan didn't like them or anything. It's just that none of them really clicked, you know?" Samantha nodded. "I feel ya. I thought that I wouldn't get with anybody before I met my wife. I did think about dating the guy who owned this house, though." "Oh, you knew him? You don't?" "Well, I never got the chance to meet him. Everything was done through the agent. I think he already moved to a second property or something. I wouldn't blame him after what happened." "What do you mean?" "Well, that's when we both heard Ryan yelling upstairs. 'Hey, let me out.' We both got up and went upstairs to see what the commotion was about. We both went into Ryan's room and found Evan with his hand on the button for the panel, and Ryan crawling out of the crawl space. 'What are you two doing?' Samantha said, hands on her hips. "We were playing hide and seek," Evan explained, "and Ryan went into his little hideout, and I closed the door just to mess with him a little bit." Samantha turned to me, as if expecting an explanation. I told her about the crawl space and how the panel worked, and she then turned to Evan and told him off for doing something like locking Ryan in there. "If you get up to something like that again," she said, "we'll leave and you'll be grounded for 2 weeks, understand?" "Yes, Mom," Evan said. "Good, now apologize to Ryan." "Sorry for locking you in there," Evan said. "It's okay," Ryan said. "It's not that scary, I just didn't want to be stuck in there." With that settled, me and Samantha headed back downstairs to continue our coffee and conversation. "Sorry about that," Samantha said. "Evan's harmless, I promise, it's just that sometimes he doesn't get when something is a bit dangerous." "It's okay," I said. "I honestly should have told them to stay away from that thing." "Why's it there anyway?" Samantha asked. "Oh, yeah, funny story. The last owner had this place custom made, and he had it built in for his kids so they'd have a little secret lair. You know how kids are." "Huh," Samantha said. She took a long sip from her coffee. "I wonder if that has anything to do with what happened." "What do you mean?" "Well," she said, "I knew the guy who lived here had a kid. You'd see him at school events, things like that. He had a daughter, about Ryan and Evan's age, but then one day she went missing." "Missing?" "Yeah, apparently it was on a camping trip too," she said. "He went to go get something from a cooler, and when he turned around, she was just gone. They combed through that whole forest trying to find her, but nothing ever turned up. Eventually, the police investigated him for foul play, but there was no evidence that he did anything to her." "When did all this happen?" "Oh, about a year ago, I think," she said. "The police got done investigating him about 6 months ago, so I guess he decided to just get away from here." I looked down into my coffee. It was always rough hearing about another parent going through something like that, because one horrible thought always floats to the top of your brain. What if something like that happens to my kid? "Don't worry," Samantha said. "I'm sure the house is fine and stuff. I just thought that you should know." "Thanks, Samantha. I appreciate the honesty." We moved on to lighter topics until it was time for Samantha and Evan to go home for dinner. I went upstairs and found the 2 boys sitting in the crawlspace together reading comics. It seemed a little cramped for the 2 of them, but they didn't seem to mind the tight space any. Evan pulled himself out, and Ryan promised to see him again at school. Later that night, I was getting ready for bed when I heard Ryan say something. "See, I told you you'd like him." There was a pause. "Oh, I'm glad you like me too," Ryan said. I decided to be cheeky and leaned down in front of where the crawl space was. "Yeah, you're both pretty all right kids." "Oh, hey Mom," Ryan said. "Get to bed, Ryan," I said. I heard Ryan shuffling on the other side of the wall. I turned off the lights and got in bed, and as I was drifting off, I had a thought. Why did Ryan sound surprised when I responded? The incident with the crawl space happened a week later. This'll sound strange, but I count myself lucky that I was out of work with a head cold when it happened. I was at home when I got a phone call from the school. "Hello, is this Ryan's mom?" a lady on the phone asked. "This is she," I said, my nose full of mucus. "Are you sitting down?" I stood up and began to pace. "Why do you ask?" "Okay, this'll be hard to explain, miss, but something's happened with Ryan." "What's wrong?" "He's gone missing. We need you to come in and discuss what's happened." My runny nose and cough were the furthest things from my mind. I got dressed and in my car in record time and drove like a madwoman over to the school. I stormed into the front office and gave the lady at the front desk a bit of a scare when I slammed my hand on her desk while she was working on her computer. "I'm Ryan's mother," I said as best as I could with my stuffy nose. "Oh, yes, right this way, ma'am," she said. She got up and unlocked a door behind her, which led to what seemed to be the administrative area of the school. I followed her down a long hallway until we got to the door to the principal's office. She knocked on the door. "Ryan's mother is here," she said. The door opened from the inside, revealing the principal. He was an older gentleman, about 60 years old, with salt and pepper hair. "Hello, ma'am, I'm Principal Thorne," he said, holding out his hand for me to shake. "I'm sorry we're meeting like this." I shook his hand and stepped into the office. Inside, there was also a security guard, a heavy-set man with a large beard who was holding a laptop. I took a seat across the principal's desk, and he sat behind it. "First of all, ma'am," he said, "I'm terribly sorry about what's happened." "Where's Ryan?" I said curtly. "Well, that's what we're trying to figure out, but there are some strange circumstances involved." "What do you mean?" "Ferguson, if you could," Thorne said, gesturing at the security guard. The security guard set his laptop down on the desk, opened it, and navigated his way through a few menus until he was in some kind of app that was connected through the school's security cameras. "Okay, so here's what we know," Ferguson said. "Around 3 hours ago, at 12:30, Ryan is in his math class with Miss Hayward." He enlarged one of the cameras. It showed a classroom full of young kids. I could see Ryan sitting right in the middle of them. A young woman drew shapes on a whiteboard, trying to explain polygons or something like that. The timestamp showed that this footage was indeed from 12:30 that day. Now, Ryan asked to go to the restroom, and Miss Hayward gave him permission. Sure enough, Ryan raised his hand. He and the teacher spoke for a bit, and then the teacher gave him a little hall pass, and he left the classroom. Ferguson then swapped to another camera, showing the hall outside the classroom. Ryan walked outside and strolled down the hall for a bit until he found the restroom. Ferguson switched to another camera, this one closer to the restroom entrance, which clearly showed Ryan walking inside. Ferguson then hit fast forward on the video, skipping past 5 minutes. Now, since Ryan took so long, Miss Hayward sent another kid to go and see what was wrong. Ferguson explained. Sure enough, the footage showed another kid walking into the restroom. He stayed in there for about a minute before running back to the classroom. According to that kid, Ferguson explained, Ryan wasn't inside of the restroom. Miss Hayward contacted me and the other security officers, and we began searching the school. He switched between various angles, which showed him and a few other men in uniform checking classrooms and the halls for any sign of Ryan. According to the timestamps, this search went on for 2.5 hours. "That's when I had the thought to just go back and check the cameras," Ferguson said, "and I found this." Ferguson switched back to the restroom entrance camera, rewound it back to when Ryan walked in, and then hit fast forward. The footage speed by, with only the occasional security officer or student passing, by giving any hint that it wasn't a still image. He fast forwarded until the camera was caught up with the live feed. Ryan hadn't walked out of the bathroom at all. "Now, we turned that restroom inside out," Principal Thorne explained. The restrooms are designed to sit in the center of the school for ease of access and to make sure that a kid can't just, say, crawl out a window and skip school. To be frank, there is no way in or out of the restroom except through that entrance. "What are you saying?" I said quietly. "What I'm saying, ma'am, is we just don't know where Ryan is." The police got called in. I gave them all the information they asked for, answered all of their questions, and was told I'd be contacted as soon as there was a development. I finally went home as the sun was setting. I weakly walked up the stairs and into my bedroom and flopped down on the bed. I closed my eyes and gave myself a moment to let the day's events catch up with me. Big mistake, because as soon as I stopped for a moment, I felt the tears begin to run down my face. I took a moment to take some deep breaths. In the dead quiet after I exhaled, I heard something. "Mommy!" I shot up out of bed. That was Ryan's voice. "Ryan," I said. "Ryan, where are you?" "Mommy." I leaned down. It sounded like it was coming from the crawl space. I decided, screw it, if this was a psychotic break then I'd deal with it, but I had to know. I ran around to Ryan's room and threw open the closet doors. I pressed the panel to open it. It slid away, and there he was. He looked pale, like he'd been sick for days. His eyes were closed, and he was lightly tossing and turning as though he were having a bad dream. I gingerly reached inside and pulled him out, and once he was out of the crawl space, his eyes fluttered open. "Mom!" "I'm here, baby, I'm here," I said. I held him tightly, as if he'd disappear again if I let go. "You're safe now, you're safe." "Mommy," he said, his voice weak, "my friend tried to take me." I set him down and looked him in the eye. "Who tried to take you, sweetie?" He pointed at the crawl space. "My friend, he lives in there." I looked at the opening to the crawl space, and suddenly it all felt wrong, deeply wrong, like it shouldn't exist. I walked over and closed the panel. "It's okay, baby," I said, hugging Ryan once more. "He won't be able to hurt you." When I finally let go of him, I noticed he had something in his hand. "What do you have there, Ryan?" I asked. He sheepishly handed the object to me. It was a small wooden slab painted a dark blue. Ms. Hayward's class was painted on it in yellow letters. I called the police and informed them of the situation. They came by the house and tried to ask Ryan questions about what happened, but he never deviated from the same story he told me. He'd gone to the restroom, and then his friend had tried to take him, and then he woke up to me pulling him out of the crawl space. I watched the officers as Ryan spoke to them, and I could see that they were realizing a few of the same things that I had. That a kid had somehow vanished into thin air when he shouldn't have been able to. That a kid had somehow then appeared in a crawl space that could only be opened from the outside while his mother was home, and she'd never noticed. That said mother couldn't possibly be responsible because she'd never gone to the school to pick him up. I watched as the cops got more and more confused as they came to these realizations. Once they were done asking Ryan questions, they told me that they'd contact me if there were any developments in the case, along with resources for child therapists in the area. Once they were gone, I asked Ryan if he wanted to sleep with me that night, and he enthusiastically said yes. We both climbed into bed together, and once I was sure Ryan was asleep, I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and walked into his bedroom. I slid the panel aside and looked into the crawl space. There was a small hole drilled into one of the walls, at about where eye level would be if Ryan was sitting inside the space. The hole should have opened up into my room. One small problem. I knew there wasn't a hole on my side of the wall. I walked around to my bedroom to double check. No hole. I walked back around and looked inside the crawl space again. Hole. I made my way into the crawl space, slowly approaching the hole. I held my hand out over it. I could feel a hot draft coming through from the other side, wherever that was. I took a deep breath and put my eye up to the hole to look at the other side. I saw a single bloodshot eye staring back at me. Then I heard something that sounded like it was being whispered right into my ear by someone with rotten breath. "Give him back to me." I got out of the crawl space as fast as I could. I shut the panel behind me. Then I grabbed one of Ryan's long-sleeved shirts, closed the closet door, and tied the doorknobs together with the shirt, all while saying a prayer that whatever that thing was would stay in there and never speak a word ever again. I got back into my bed with Ryan. I looked at him as he slept peacefully. It was the first time he'd looked relaxed all day. I held him tightly as I stared at the wall that somehow both had a hole and didn't, and I dared the thing I'd seen and heard to try and take my son away from me again. It's been 3 days since then, and things have been tense since that night. I got all of Ryan's clothes out of the closet, keeping an eye on the panel as I did so, and put them all up in my own. I also got a bike lock and some zip ties, and used them to keep the closet doors shut, and so far they haven't budged an inch. I'm trying my best to figure out how to get us both out of this house. But unfortunately, a house isn't something you can just turn around and sell within 3 weeks. So far, nothing else has happened with Ryan. He's been a little less active than usual, but I'm getting him a therapist, and he's been sleeping in my bed every night so he doesn't have to worry about that. I don't know what I'm going to do. I need to get us out of here, but that's gonna be easier said than done. What I do know is this: no one messes with my kid while I'm around. No one.